Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on Atlassian governance practices. I'm Bonnie Beyer. I'm a delivery manager with Valiantis Expion, and I'm excited to present today. I have dozens of years, sad to say, in engineering and avionics, and then I led the agile transformation for my company, and I had so much fun doing that. Now I like to do it for clients as a consultant. I'm joined today by Jason, who's showing up as Steve by the name, but that's okay. He's borrowing somebody's computer. Hi, Jason. You want to introduce yourself?
Did you cut out? Yeah, you cut out there for a second, so I don't know if it cut out on the webinar, but I couldn't hear you. But yeah, so hey everybody, I'm Jason Butner. I'm the head of practice for what I'm calling right now the strategic advisory, which is just basically agile at scale and business agility here at Valiantis. And most of my background, I like to say when I had a real job, this is so much fun. I don't even call it a real job, but when I had a real job, I was in the industry and then have worked in software for the last about decade, helping lead strategic transformation at companies, and I even started my own company there for a little while, and now I'm loving doing this.
Excellent. Hopefully my Wi-Fi will hold up. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I thought you said hold up. So, all right. So just cover the agenda for today. We're gonna cover governance and why it's important. So what is governance? Why is it important for your organization and all organizations really that have to handle data and manage projects? Who needs to be involved to have successful governance at your company? How you would go about implementing that? And Bonnie's going to do a demonstration of how we lead customers through governance engagements. So let's buckle up.
All right. If I break up, let me know and I'll turn off my camera. But governance, just a quick overview of what governance means. Governance involves the process of making and enforcing the decisions within an organization or in a society. It encompasses the various aspects of decision-making and control because you want to ensure that operations run efficiently and in alignment with organizational goals. But the best governance is representative and includes everybody in the decision making. And so there's lots of examples of governance that organizations will see in their practices. And it will involve not just your tools, but also your methodologies and your culture, or your HR, for example, your development practices, or you might have scope control through a CCB with large government programs. And then IT historically has a lot of good governance over their enterprise tools and your email systems, share drives, all of the company-wide tools especially. And so why do we care about this? If you're not following governance with your Atlassian tools, you're finding that you get into situations where it's difficult to do proper and easy project management in your Atlassian tool suite. And so what you want to accomplish is to be able to track the full development lifecycle through your toll gate processes for all of your initiatives. And you want to be able to improve the visibility and management of dependencies and impediments, schedule, scope. And also you want to be able to improve visibility. And that includes alignment from the top down all the way to the teams that are executing their work. And you want to provide that guidance and those standards, which really helps enable decentralizing decision making so that people can do the work that they love without having to figure out how to make the tool work for them. We see a lot of situations where governance is not being followed. And I guess we've affectionately called them the Wild, Wild West.
Yeah, so the Wild, Wild, yeah. I don't know how many folks out there have seen this, but it's a mild Western. I don't even think I'd call it a Western, but but the wild, wild west is what Bonnie was just talking about. Like how often we come out to companies and work with them and we show up and it's just kind of, you know, everything goes. And so, but if we're going to talk about a good Western here, if you click again, Bonnie, I just want to establish so you guys know that we do have some credibility here at Valiantis, that Tombstone is one of my probably top three, top five. So I don't know if anybody's on live today, but if you are, feel free to put your top Western in the chat. Or if you're watching this webinar down the line, feel free to reach out to either Bonnie or me and let us know what your favorite Western is. But suffice it to say, we don't want to operate in the wild, wild west in our companies. And there's a lot of pain involved, a lot of craziness, and hopefully nobody gets killed, right? But you know, you see a lot of characters in the wild, wild west, and one of them, you know, that we're going to hone in on is kind of like sometimes you've got you know, multiple issue types that are the same thing, but you kind of have, you know, what we call like the prima donna, or, you know, the person who really honestly kind of has control over their environment. So they're not relinquishing a code or a process or something like that. And, you know, that's not always bad, but we want to get to know the characters. And so Bonnie, maybe you could introduce a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, my husband's favorite is Yellowstone. I don't watch it myself, but he loves that show. But really, Wild Wild West, what we mean really is we have something called the Jira Hall of Fame at our company, where we capture some of the records. And I don't know if it's maintained, but have you seen any of these kinds of systems where they have hundreds of issue types? I I love this picture of a workflow. This is an actual workflow, and I've seen another one that's similar in my own past. But if you have a lot of Jira admins and you have hundreds or thousands of workflows or issue types or custom fields, it's quite possible that you need to get some governance over your Atlassian tools. Those are causing a drain on your teams in ways that you may not even realize. Um, some of those symptoms that we see with, oops, skipping slides here. Some of the symptoms that we'll see with those, are you using, are all of the projects using their own issue type and workflow schemes? And that the default in Jira is such that when you create a project, it defaults to separate schemes for everything. So it really lends itself to that wild, wild west being out of the box when people start using their system. Do you have several dozen issue types? Do you have multiple versions of the done status? Done, complete, closed, finished, approved, whatever, all these different done statuses. And I remember a presentation I saw at the Atlassian Summit many years ago, where they were talking about they went from 600 different done statuses down to 3. And so, but do you have several dozen resolution values? Or are your admins untrained or inexperienced? Do they understand the best practices? And do you have several dozen of them doing things independently? If the answer to some of those questions is yes, then your organization probably does need to look at some governance. And so some of the common challenges that you need to address, if you have that wild, wild west configuration, you need to understand how that's going to impact your end users. It causes confusion. Bulk editing when there's thousands of fields. Anybody who's done a bulk edit knows how crazy that is. And they won't use the fields that you do want them to use because they'll be confused which ones. Permissions or security issues. Those are a major concern when it comes to how you're managing access and how you're managing your Active Directories. Your end user support models. Do you have those well defined? Does everybody know how to reach out when they have a question or when they need a new Jira project or a Confluence space? Do the admins have that proper training? And do they have their maintenance activities set up? Do you need to do some system cleanup? Do you have your Jira architected to support project management tools? Because Jira out of the box provides so much capability for the team level reporting, but in order to integrate into the program and portfolio management solutions, there's really some definite best practices that you need to follow for those integrations to work well. So those are a lot of the things that people will look at when they're establishing governance over their system. And when you get started, the first thing you need to do is identify who is involved. And so you got to have a product owner. You need to have people that understand the system. You need to have your admins. And you need to have representatives from across the organization that are representing all the different types of work. I say 6 to 10 engaged representatives. That's when I say 6 to 10 engaged representatives. You can have 20 representatives, but as long as you have a core group that are really engaged, that's what's going to make it successful. And they are going to start out, they're going to establish their team vision and goals and how they operate as a team. They're going to talk about what is the scope of their responsibility, which tools and which support models. They're going to identify and implement and document what they're supporting and what their Jira architectural design is. After baselining that, it'll go down to a monthly activity, hopefully, especially if you've got a good support model in place. Just to review the change requests as they come in, and maintenance and user support and upgrades. And when those change requests come in, the board members are then going to collaboratively meet and consider all the aspects of change, try to come to consensus, but they are the voting and governing body. And so they'll take a vote, and that is how you would establish governance. And so one of the first things you're going to do, of course, is build that governance vision and the governance purpose. And these are just some that we have that are standard, but really you want to review that and refine that as a team. The important thing I like to point out is that what you're looking for is balance. You're looking for that right balance of what do we absolutely need to standardize to support our goals for our project management and PMO solutions, while still providing the customizations. We don't want to optimize for silos. We want to ensure systems thinking is involved here, but striking that balance will vary by organization based on what they prioritize. And so they're going to create, their purpose is to create, discuss, decide, and implement that Atlassian product and all of its configuration and components. And of course, you also have to name your governance board. I was working with one that's a Jira governance board. I've heard it called the Atlassian Advisory Board, the Atlassian Change Advisory Board. There's so many different names. One I heard yesterday was AGE, the Atlassian governance experts, because wisdom comes with age. I really like that. So that one. So when you're setting your goals and your components, you need to understand what is the scope of your governance board. So it might include all of your products like Confluence and Jira. If you're source control, you might have Bitbucket or so all of that portfolio governance will be over all of those products, Jira Service Management, Atlas. You could pull in all kinds of different things. But you probably want to start with the basics of Jira. And then you're going to also then talk about what is your scope of responsibility. And that includes having your best practices in place, having your framework tools and all of the governance and guidance around those, your how-to articles and your policies and procedures. All of these components of the scope of your operation are working to satisfy these, which are your goals. And what you're looking for is scalable growth, visibility, transparency, visible control by the organization for the organization. So they have user ownership and knowledge sharing. I really would love to hear what kind of goals other governance board experts have on this. I think it's really valuable, though, that when you think about when you think about systems thinking and not optimizing for the silos, that's when you can really provide a strong, robust solution. Any thoughts, Jason?
I guess I was just thinking, like, what would be an example of some of the blockers you've seen for success when people do this?
They might be trying to take on too much, but Usually the biggest blockers or the biggest failures to make good progress on this is a lack of engagement, where the people are not actually getting involved in learning and understanding what they need to learn. Uh, and they're not talking to the people that are their team members to find out their expertise and what they care about. So you don't have a good representative, engaged governance body, or they don't have the authority to make the decisions. And so you got to have both. So
Yeah. Well, and it makes me think about, we're talking about, some folks out there watching this might be starting their governance, path, and some folks might have already done this before. But it's easy to get really excited in the beginning about something. You're starting something new. It's going to be beneficial for the company. It's something that people have thought, man, we need to do this, and we've needed to do it for a long time. But this establishment of an actual governance board and a working model over time helps to sustain that growth, because we know that agile transformation or any type of transformational effort takes time. And so it's like one of those things, you can't just get it started and then, 3 months later it dies on the vine, so that engagement thing is huge. Go ahead.
yeah, absolutely. And so really what's happening when they first start out is they typically are learning. So as long as they're excited to learn the new things, and also there's the balance of excitement of learning the new things, but there's also the fear of change. How is this going to impact me? Is this going to cause my teams to have to change in ways they don't want to? And so we have to level set and make sure everybody understands, no, we're still looking for the proper levels of customization. Um, and so we're trying to teach you what you need to know so that you can see what you're doing really well and where you might be able to do things better. And so,
Go ahead.
yeah,
Well, it just makes me think of the characters, like you said, some people might be really excited and some people might say, well, how's this going to affect me? And, Bonnie, you and I were talking a couple of weeks ago about, folks out there who kind of have everything is working for them. And I don't want that to change. I don't want my nomenclature to change. I don't want my process to change. And there can be some fear around that. And sometimes I've been in situations where, we were implementing for, let's just say, well, we were implementing an entirely new BI strategy at the company. And, oh, I mean, at first, those folks were looked at as major blockers. And you brought up a really good point, Bonnie. And I had to go back to my experience too and realize actually a couple of those folks were amazing on the team once they were on board with it, because those are the folks who really knew what they were doing.
yeah,
They
those
really
are the
did.
people you want. You want
Yeah.
those people on your governance board, because not only are they going to be engaged in that, not only are they already going to understand quite a bit of the concepts, but then when they learn about the best practices and the industry expertise, they start coming up with better solutions for their organization. And then they're the best ones to include. Also, you don't want resistors, outside of the board. So the prima donnas, bring them on board. Absolutely.
Good word.
And so when we first meet up, in fact, I just kicked off a governance board earlier today. We first we talk about our practices, what we're trying to accomplish, and how we're going to go about doing that. But then we start getting down into the architectural decisions, and I set them up with guidance around certain architectural decisions and send them away with that homework to review it with their teams. And then we'll be coming back to then vote on our decisions about what decisions we're making. So some of those decisions relate to your hierarchy. What are the hierarchy of work in your system, and what are the layers of scale that you need to represent in your organization? What is that scope of responsibility for your governance board? And then we need to talk about the Jira configuration structure, and if we talk about what is a project, what is a Jira project, because that word project is so overloaded. It doesn't mean the same thing as what different organizations think project means. It's just a container of issues. In fact, one of our great clients, they call it a Jira container. And so I try to level set them on what a project means, because some organizations are going to structure them around teams. Some are going to structure them around programs. Some might try to structure them around products or initiatives or various other things. And so we need to be careful that we define that for our organization, at least the ones that we want to roll up into our portfolio structures. And then as we move on, we're going to then talk about what are those program and portfolio requirements. Not immediately, but that'll come. And then team level customizations and integrations. So all of these are the architectural decisions that are going to go into this. And I'll give a demo of this in a bit also. We have an actual Confluence space where we walk people through these types of activities that I've been building and continue to refine. But before we get into the demo, Jason, you want to tell us a little bit about Valiantis?
Yeah, sounds good. So yeah, just our company. I mean, a lot of words up here in the slide, but just right at the top, we are the #1 Atlassian Platinum Solution Partner globally. We are a global company. And I think the reason we are the top is not just the numbers on the bottom, you know, the specializations we have and the number of customers we've worked with and our depth of expertise around agility and agility at scale. For me, and actually I'll just kind of personally share what attracted me to come work at Valiantis was a few words. And I would say #1 is kindness. I've worked in the tech industry for some time, and it can be a lot of adjectives, but kindness is one that I saw in the folks at Valiantis. I actually was a customer at one point, and empathy. I felt like they just, you know, I got on the phone. I had one call with them where I explained what I was trying to do and what some of my pains and challenges were. And by the next call, they had like pinpointed almost better than I could have said it, you know, some ideas and thoughts around what we were discussing. And I just felt like we were in the flow. And, you know, one other thing that's probably important to point out is, you know, at Valiantis brings in people that there's a reason we have this knowledge and expertise. And a lot of it does come from the industry. Bonnie herself came from the industry. But really the focus is on hiring awesome people, and the rest works itself out. And that makes a big difference. And I think that's led to what you're seeing here on the slide. So next slide. And so a lot of those things are right here: cutting edge curiosity, commitment to value, customer centric. And one thing I'll point out is we talk about this every single day, multiple times per day. I think you have to be obnoxious sometimes in a company like this. And this is, we want to bring, and this is it, we want to bring value in every single interaction. Value in every interaction. And I want to be maniacal about that. If we're all focused at that, then, you know, we're not going to lose. We're going to find ways to help our customers. And it's our hope that webinars like this is an example, a free resource for you. And we want to leave value out there for free that you as a customer, a potential customer, could have. And you know, the reason we're targeting, yeah, I mean, you know, this is just a very small list of the customers that we work with. And, you know, we don't only work with large customers, we work with small and large, but pretty extensive. And the reason that we're doing this webinar is it's getting, just really quickly, it's getting really apparent out there that this is more of a need. It may have something to do with that many customers, Atlassian customers, are moving to the cloud because of some deadlines. And so governance, #1, could be getting ignored, or at least we're working with our customers and we're seeing the environment when we help them do their cloud migration. And when we see that environment, it just helps kind of open up the conversation. And so this pathway of saying, hey, we just did a cloud migration, and it doesn't have to be that, but we just did the cloud migration, and we see that there's some room for improvement because we've also heard during this process that you have a huge desire or need to scale your organization or transform. Could be regulatory pressure. It could be that you're heading into like an M&A season, and you have to bring in new companies and do a lot of post-merger integration. And how could you possibly scale if everything is all over the place? And whatever the cause is that scaling is necessary, governance is a wonderful place to start if it's not in control. And this is the model that we would suggest where we've seen success. Like Bonnie said, she nailed it. It's just finding an engaged team, move into something that we call a governance workshop. This is a webinar, but we do also have a workshop that we offer that's a great starter. It delivers a lot of value. And then if needed, and a lot of times it's very beneficial then to move into a governance engagement, which we could scope, but typically turns out to be, just by the nature of the beast, is about a 3-month engagement. And that's what we call our success model. If you follow that, you're going to see success. We've had a lot of customers who have.
Yeah, I had one client last year. We were doing we called it the level up service, and we established our governance board and did some conversions of some of their programs into their future way of working, the way they wanted to model it through that governance board. And I had such a great engaged product owner working on it. Well, she wasn't the product owner at the time, but by the time I left, she became the product owner of the whole system. And she's doing great. She's just marching along, managing that system, doing really well. And they just reach out when they have questions about special needs now. But yeah, I enjoy these kinds of engagements. So, but let me go ahead and go into the demo. So here I am in our XPM demo site. And so I have a space that's the Jira governance board. And right up front, we try to tell what we're trying to accomplish, what is our mission. And you can see I use my hypercursor so I can point to what I'm looking at. I know there's a lot of text on the screens. But then we have our schedule and our cadence and our agenda. So we're going to meet frequently in the beginning, bi-weekly at least, where we're reviewing our baseline options or the change requests that are being requested. And the homework will be assigned to the board members to review those options with their teams. And then we'll come back with questions and discussions, and then they'll vote. And so we would have all of our documentation of who are the product admins, who are the admin group, and who is the governance board. And we might even break it up into specialties, because some may be working more for Jira Service Management, some are more concerned with, say, Jira Align, or whatever they're showing governance over in their system. And they would also document what is the scope of their system, what are the tools that they have responsibility for. But over then in our structure of our space, we actually have it broken into 3 sections here: our governance practices, our Atlassian administration area, and our knowledge base. And so this knowledge base is not just about our configuration, but also all of our guidance for end users when they need to know what they need to know about our system and what they need to know about Atlassian tools in general. But also our run books include our support models and our maintenance activities, our change request policies, how we implement new projects or implement certain support activities. And then our decision log is where we actually do all of our governing, where we make all of our decisions on this. So we will start out with our project architecture, structure, and our hierarchy. We'll also then start talking about our workflow, starting and ending practices. Then we'll get into our project categories, and we'll define our different project category details, our priority scheme and notification schemes, our admin access groups. All of these things will be discussed about what are the best practices for these, and what are the options for decisions, and then make the decision and go with it. And so that's really, it works really well. This is then long-lived documentation that the admins know how to update for their Jira configuration for the different project categories. For example, project category 1 with what their issue type schemes would be, and all of the different details that end users care about. But nothing more than that, because you don't want to recreate what's in the Jira administration stuff itself. You just want to document the bare minimum of what your end users really need to know when they're requesting a project, so they can tell you this is the type of project we need, right? So that's what where we get started and how this operates. The Jira Governance Board will also probably operate in Jira. So we build out a backlog that's based on our practices of what decisions come first and establishing the governance board itself. So anything specific, I can go into project categories. We can talk about the different project category recommendations we have that integrate with the different program systems, and then the options that we decide between whether we want the multiple project structure or the single project structure, and some of our pros and cons. We'll also talk about the notification schemes that are common practices, such as you want a zero notification scheme for, you might want a standard Atlassian as your default notification scheme. You might want a lightweight notification scheme for teams that they can select. And of course, you want to have guidance for your end users, pointing to Atlassian documentation if preferred, which is best, on how they can reduce or manage their own notification preferences as well. So yeah, that's just, any questions, Jason, on how we operate on this?
Well, first of all, this is amazing. I mean, when you say, do you drink your own champagne, or do you drink your own Kool-Aid? I mean, this is in Atlassian. The framework is in Atlassian that we manage this process. And it's also, you're just seeing here, this is really thorough. This isn't, a wing it engagement. So Bonnie's showing you what she would actually walk through with you. So earlier when I mentioned a governance workshop, she would break these concepts down, a next level deeper. And if you were to do an engagement, she'd walk through this entire process with you. Maybe another comment there is, Bonnie just kicked off a governance engagement this morning with a customer. There were two, if I understand right, there were two executive sponsors that were there. They were super supportive, setting an agenda and expectations. And I think if I remember right, you said 15 team members on the phone. And so this could also be done. Some things can certainly be done remotely. I think that's very important, to get as much value as quickly as possible. But some of these things could be done in person, which could also bring a lot of value, just so you're seeing the context of what Bonnie and our team can actually deliver. But I don't know if there's anything else you'd add to that, but I was just super excited that we actually did a kickoff this morning, the very thing that you're showing here and we're talking about. This isn't
Yeah.
conceptual.
No, it was fun. And it's really just something, back when I learned a lot of this when I was at Rockwell Collins. So that's where my avionics experience was, 20 plus years there. But my last 5 or so years there, I was in the shared services managing our Atlassian tools and our agile transformation. And one of our support team leaders, Carrie, she was amazing. And she's the one that actually taught me about governance over tooling, and how to provide the great support models and enablement models, and have the proper governance over the configuration and it was when I presented on this at the Atlassian Summit in 2016, it was amazing. I was swarmed by so many people who were like, how did you get everybody to agree? And it was like, well, I didn't realize it was such a problem until I became a consultant, and I realized that so many organizations really do struggle with this. So yeah, it's fun.
Well, and the advantage here of facilitating this is we get to kind of be an innocent third party, if you think about it. So we're bringing team members together. Sometimes I've noticed when in doing facilitated workshops with customers that sometimes you'll be asking some questions around their challenges, and there'll be people from different teams in the room, and they're like, really? Is that how? Wait a second. And they start talking, and then I'm kind of noticing these guys haven't talked in at least a long time. And so I just get to sit back and watch them start to converse and share information that maybe hasn't been shared in the past. And so there's value in just doing that, and then you start to get alignment and camaraderie and ideas flowing, and that's really valuable too. Yeah. I had a side thought too, Bonnie, and I know this is totally bruising the flow here, but you brought up Yellowstone, and I couldn't get it out of my mind because we watched that show, my wife and I thought, goodness gracious, if governance board turned out like Yellowstone, that wouldn't be pretty. I watched enough episodes to know we don't want a Yellowstone governance board, okay? I mean, the
I've only
scenery was
seen a couple
pretty, but
minutes, and that was enough for me.
that's all you need. So, but yeah, that was funny you brought that up.
Yeah, but if there are any questions, feel free to put those in the Q&A. I know that Jason, did you have any questions?
Well, I just, you've done this so much. Maybe your best example of a customer like the one we just talked about, who we're just starting. All right. They reached out because they want to scale and they know this is a blocker if they can't improve here. So they're excited to improve so that they can scale. But since you've done this many times, what's maybe your best or really good example of a customer who has scaled now, has been able to move to the next level because they really tightened up their governance?
Oh, well, we see it with a lot of our clients who are our Jira Align customers, because anybody who's successful with Jira Align, they have to have good governance first over their Jira system. And we also see it with a lot of our clients that are doing scaled agile framework or less or disciplined agile, because they also are scaling. And whenever they scale and have an actual defined methodology, then they typically will also have some good governance over their practices and their tools. And in order to implement that, so our Jira Align customers definitely always have good governance. I mentioned that one that I kicked off last year, that I worked with, and she was the product owner at the end of the engagement. They're doing really well on using their advanced roadmaps for their project management now. They're not, what are they? They're following kind of a Scrum of Scrums practice. I don't remember if it wasn't less, it was just Scrum of Scrums. But that worked out really well for her too, because she developed an expertise and now has changed her career somewhat, and it's got a promotion. So, but
It's a
I think
great
some of the,
story.
huh?
Well, that's a great story. Stories
Yeah.
have conflict and overcoming and victory and then heroes. And I'm actually stunned at how many of our customers have actually promoted or advanced in their careers because they're, doing wonderful things and getting recognized.
Oh, you went on mute. But yeah, there was some custom. When I think about, sometimes though, it's not always. Sometimes it is Yellowstone-ish, right? If your org can't come to a consensus, that will turn into some battles. I remember back at Rockwell, our governance board, we were called the Change Advisory Board. We we had certain requests that kept coming back to us over and over and over again. And the teams on the governance board, they would battle it out, and it would always be as they couldn't come to an agreement. They wanted to be able to deliver subtasks independent from the parent issue. And there were some that were just dead set, this is going against our guidance of what we want to do when it comes to deliveries. And there were others that were absolutely certain that they wanted to have fixed versions and deliveries on subtests separate from their stories. So we never really quite came to an agreement, but the voting body almost, it always ended up like one vote, and it was like, sorry, we can't come to consensus, but the vote is can't deliver subtasks separate from stories. But yeah, it really requires that you can have somebody who can facilitate. So when I'm on an engagement, like the one I was describing before, or a couple others that I had the previous year, I'm always looking for who is going to be that person that takes over when I stop. And I'm trying to make sure I can train them on what I'm doing to facilitate this, what I'm doing in advance to prepare the materials so they can so they can take that over, because they may not realize all the stuff I'm doing in the background unless I'm actually training them to show them what I'm doing to prepare for that. So yeah, it's a process.
It's awesome. Thanks for sharing the real life examples like that. That's really valuable. If you go to the next slide, so if any of you out there are watching this, and we're going to leave this up here for a second so that you can scan it with your phones, our LinkedIn contact information is there. That's a great way to get a hold of us. Of course, our emails are there. That's a fantastic way to get a hold of us. And there's even some information here splashed on the right side of the screen that shows different events that we have that are, again, that value that we want to deliver at every interaction. So there's a lot of resources out there for you guys, but please reach out if something in this was interesting to you and you just have questions. Either one of us is a great phone call, and we'd be happy to talk with you more about, what your challenges are, or just to help you answer a question if it's that simple. But
I think Addie, those two links on the slide, can you put those in the chat so that people can access those?
oh yeah, those aren't live links. So yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so this is a screenshot from this morning of the different classes that are upcoming. There's more. I only took a screenshot of the top 4 rows, but we offer a lot of different classes and workshops.
So yeah, thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. Please do reach out if you have governance needs or any questions around scaling. We would be happy to answer them for you and work with you to get on a path.
All right. I guess that's the end of the webinar. Thanks for attending, and I hope you found value.